What is up, everybody? DJ Neeks here, and this is a video where we're going to take a look at a game that I have been playing a lot of recently. Like, I have really gotten into this game. Now, keep in mind, I want to point this out really early on for anyone watching who is a veteran, longtime player of this franchise. I am still consider myself a relatively new player, okay? There are still things about this franchise I am still learning, okay? I'm still in the learning phases of how to play this, okay? Even though I've been playing this a lot, like tons of hours recently, over the past couple weeks, I still feel like there are things I still need to learn about this, okay? I just want to get that out of the way. This is not from someone who is a longtime veteran expert player. This is from someone who is a relatively new novice learning player, okay? Now that I've gotten that out of the way, I just want to show you guys this. For any of you who are not familiar with this franchise, just to give you an idea of what I've been playing a lot of and what I would recommend to get. If you are at all... let me start by saying, this is Total War Warhammer. Now, Total War is a franchise, a strategy game franchise, where in one phase, you are controlling a faction on a gigantic campaign map, where you will be managing an economy, you'll be building buildings in certain settlements and provinces, and you will be building up armies and other capitals and, things like that. And in another phase, when you have your controlled army encounter an opposing army, you will then be able to control your army of hundreds of soldiers or other things. I'll get into that later. On a map, you'll be able to tell them, like, get into this formation, move over here, set up in this formation facing this way to be able to counter this enemy unit. It's very in-depth in terms of strategy, and I am still learning it, but I really enjoy it. I've always liked strategy games. You guys know I love StarCraft too. So I was very interested in this when I was hearing it from guys like Angry Joe and Total Biscuit about how much they enjoyed this franchise. And there was this latest edition. Now, I did delve into the previous versions, because Total War used to focus on historical time periods. There were games like Medieval 2, Napoleon, Empire, Shogun 2, Rome 2, that focused on those historical time periods, and so you played factions from those time periods. In Shogun 2, you played various different samurai factions from that time period in Japan. In Rome 2, you played various factions from that time period in that Rome area, whether it was a few different factions within Rome, or whether it was the Spartans, or whether it was the Egyptians, or different factions from that area. Empire focused on the Revolutionary War, with colonial America and England and other factions like that from that time period. So you guys can get the idea. Now they have adapted a fantasy license called Warhammer. Now I'm relatively new to the Warhammer fantasy license myself. I'm not that very familiar with Warhammer. But I will say this is a good starting point. This is something that you can delve into, not necessarily know that much about, but I feel like it's a good way to introduce you to this universe. So I will admit that when I saw the factions, I didn't really know anything about them, but I feel like I'm able to kind of get introduced to them in a nice enough way that it feels like it's friendly to me in that regard. And I'll show you guys what I mean here. So, one of the main points of this game is that you are going to be playing in a big, grand campaign here on a gigantic map. It's called the Old World. Prepare thyself. The Old World trembles and the ground shakes with marching armies. For there is naught but war. In the Old World campaign, you must make your race supreme amongst the rabble, the usurpers, and the many enemies you will encounter as you conquer. This is the ultimate test of generalship and statecraft. With the fate of the Old World, then the lands beyond in your hands, eternal war and fleeting glory are yours to command. Conquer this world. And as you can see, there are a ton of different playable races for you to play as, and each one feels different. One thing I think I felt as I was playing trying out some of the older ones, like I tried out Shogun 2, I tried out Rome 2, is that a lot of them, felt almost kind of the same because they were all humans and just some of them had different bonuses. Like one faction was better at making missile infantry, archers. Another faction was better at making melee infantry, and that was kind of like some of the main general basic differences, things like that. Here, each race feels completely different because of how they are, and how they operate. Like if we go here, these are DLC things for certain factions. But if we go here, look at all the factions you can play as, and each one feels different. We have the Empire, which are humans. It's beset on all sides by enemies. Valiant warrior general supplemented by arcane battle wizard Karl Franz, the new untested emperor, must unite the empire to fight the encroaching forces of destruction. So they have colleges of magic, empire offices, and well-rounded unit roster. With war machines, they are mainly humans that they have gunners, crossbowmen, they have sword infantry, they have artillery units like big cannons and steam tanks and things like that. That's one way of playing. And then you have a faction like the Vampire Counts that they have to utilize vampiric corruption to be able to spread their territory, because if they are in an area without vampiric corruption, they suffer attrition and their armies start to suffer. They also have very different unit rosters where they don't have any missile infantry. They have mainly melee infantry and lots of monster units instead of artillery units. And it feels completely different compared to how the Empire plays. So to give you an idea of what it's like when you, let's say if I want to play as the Empire, it then gives me these different general units that I can be able to select as my starting, though you can unlock the others in the game if you don't want to bother doing that. So, here, for example, this is one of the main ones. It'll show you that this is the faction leader, the Emperor Karl Franz. He's a powerful melee fighter and a leader. He can unlock Deathclaw, a unique griffin mount. Yes, that is one of my absolute favorite things about this game, is that some of these generals get awesome looking mounts, and Deathclaw is awesome. He also has very specific effects. He has extra movement range on the campaign map. Your army units have something called an upkeep. So the more armies and other very strong units you have, the more it's going to take out of your income, your monetary income. So you have to be able to manage your economy so you can be able to have a decent income while also being able to have enough where the upkeep of your armies won't cause you to go into bankruptcy. That's kind of how it works. If it's a little hard to understand, it's something that, I'm hoping that basically the nutshell is that the more armies and soldiers you have, the less, or the more it's going to take out of your main income, which is what you need to be able to sustain your faction. If you go bankrupt, you're going to lose, your faction's going to start to suffer attrition and be hurt. He also has a Lord Recruit rank there. He also gets different additional starting units when you start off with him in his initial army. Halberd infantry, handgunners, and Reichsguard, cavalry units. Now, that's just for Karl Franz. Now, if I switch over to a different starting lord, Balthazar Geltier, it tells me he's a Lord of Metal Wizard, and he can unlock a Flying Pegasus mount. He has extra armor for all of the units in his army. Oh, no, for all forces. Never mind, not just his army, but for all forces. He has less upkeep for battle wizards, heroes, but he also gets different starting units. Great swords, mortars, siege artillery units, and outriders. And if I go to Volkmar, it shows that he's a powerful leader melee fighter, can unlock a War of Alter Sigmar mount, which looks kind of silly. And can unlock powerful upgrades for Flagellants units, these guys right here. Mace infantry, they're damage dealers. He can unlock upgrades for them. So you can get the general idea here that, how each one works. And by the way, certain faction leaders get an introduction, which if you're brand new like this is a nice little tutorial kind of thing here, which I'll probably make separate videos on, because if I want to do campaigns of these different factions and such, I've kind of been keep in mind, I'm still learning, and I would be playing this on easy. Okay, I'm not, like I said, I'm still a relatively new player. I'm not one of those who's gonna be like, I'm gonna play on legendary difficulty. No, 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 no. Let me tell you right now, this game is not a cakewalk, okay? Even when you're playing on easy, this game is not easy. It still offers a challenge, especially for those like myself who are still new to this franchise and are still learning. If you are a longtime veteran player of this franchise and you love to play on Legendary and you love to boast about it and be able to go around with your videos going, I play on Legendary difficulty and look how amazing I am, good for you. That doesn't mean all of the rest of us have to. If there are those of us like myself who are still relatively new, or people watching who are still relatively new to this but want to get into it, don't feel any shame, or don't make us feel ashamed for wanting to play on easier difficulties, because we still want to get a better grasp on how to play this game. Okay? Good. Because I never see anybody playing on easier difficulties, and it just, you know, am I the only one right now playing this that's like, wants to play this like on that difficulty so I can still learn how to play? You know, I'm just gonna, I keep looking up playthroughs of this game, and I never see anyone play on anything less than hard or very hard. It just, you know, if you, I feel like if I did this, I would want it to be on easy to be able to help out newer players. Though I will say, sometimes I may not start with the faction leader that has the introduction. I may start with a different starting lord. Like, for example, that's just the Empire. Of course, I would start with Karl Franz. But, for example, I would, if I was doing a campaign on the vampire counts, I wouldn't start with Manfred von Karstein here as the faction leader with the introduction. I would make a separate video showing the introduction, because the introductions are pretty cool, with these showing you how the battles work. But I would actually pick someone else, because there are ways to unlock these other legendary lords that you can get, but some of them are easier than others, and some of them are harder than others. Like, for example, Heinrich Kemmler, in my opinion, is the hardest and most time-consuming to unlock as a lord to recruit. This guy, of course, you can get very easily, very quickly. Same with Manfred von Karstein. Kemmler takes a while, so I would actually want to start as Kemmler and then unlock these two, because you can do so very quickly. Yes, I would probably lose some of the other different things here, you know, but that's stuff you can make up for later. So that's just give you an idea that I would do a video on the introduction, but I would actually do my playthrough starting with Kemmler, just as an example. Just as an example. And that's pretty much how it works. You have main factions here, like the Greenskins. This is the main faction, but then you have sub-factions within this, such as the Bloody Hands. They're still Greenskins, but it's a little different. It's a little sub-faction here that you can actually be able to try and play through as your main faction. And you would get a different starting legendary lord here, with different starting units, and with different... There are different victory conditions and objectives in each campaign for each different faction. And, I mean, you can be able to try and pull it off if you want. With the lesser ones, though I do recommend, before you play the sub-factions like Crooked Moon or Bloody Hands, you gotta play the Greenskins so you can learn how the faction works. Same with Von Karstein. You don't want to play Von Karstein before you play the Vampire Counts, because the Vampire Counts is a nice way to introduce you to how this faction works, and then once you're familiar with that, then play Von Karstein, so that way you're like already familiar with how it works and you can be ready to go. And some are harder than others. Now, I mentioned that one of the aspects was managing your economy and settlements. And then there are factions like the Warriors of Chaos and the Beastmen who don't have settlements. They are a horde faction where they actually take their economy and buildings with them, with their armies. It's very interesting how that works, but it can also be very difficult. Warriors of Chaos, see initial challenge hard. Yeah, they're not very easy to play. They can be a little difficult to play and manage. I'm still really getting a grasp on the Beastmen. I just recently unlocked the Beastmen. I'm kind of starting to get, starting to really get a grasp on how they work. Different things like the, other factions as well. The Norska, Bretonia, I don't even bother with this. This seemed a little bit of a weird faction. The Dwarves, they have different army units that can be able to focus on being shielded and armored and more defensive stuff. And I love that there's background stuff for each faction here. So for people like myself who are brand new to this universe, I can actually know or read up about it within the game. This is how you do lore for your factions and your universe in the game, Destiny. Sorry, just want to get that off my chest because I agreed with Angry Joe in that part that it should have been in the game and I shouldn't have to look it up. In fact, here's the cool thing. here's the cool thing about this. It has its own game guide Wikia page built into the game. Look at this. It's a Wikia page built within the game. What a concept! What an amazing concept. It's astounding to me that there aren't other games that don't have this stuff. This is a game that really knows how to help out tons of different variations of their player base, whether they are expert veteran players or whether they're new novice learning players like myself. This is very invaluable for people like myself. The fundamentals, the user interface, learning how to use the camera in battles. In fact, I'm probably going to make a separate video where I show you guys each of the different units and armies for each of these different factions. But yeah, you guys can see here, there's tons of great stuff here in terms of introducing you to this universe and how this works. We've got backgrounds on each of these different factions here, details on how they work and how they play. Some are a little bit more fun to play than others, some are a little bit more complicated to play than others. But even though I'm still a new player to this, you know, still learning, I am having I wouldn't be playing this for tons and tons and tons of hours recently if I wasn't having a complete blast. I'm having a absolute blast playing this game. It's so much fun. I am not confident enough to play on harder difficulties, but I still feel like I am having a ton of fun learning how to play this. Can it be challenging at times? Absolutely it can. But is it a blast to play? Absolutely. So, I highly recommend picking this up. If you are into strategy games at all, if you're into fantasy games at all, by the way, here's a thought I was having. Imagine this franchise, but with a different, more well-known fantasy license. Like, imagine Total War Lord of the Rings. Or Total War Game of Thrones. I'm just putting it out there. You know, I'm really hoping that Creative Assembly hears about that and perhaps considers that, because I'm telling you guys, this franchise is made for things like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. Like, if they can do this with Warhammer, they can do it with licenses like that. And I think that's where this franchise needs to stay now. I have picked up Warhammer 2, but I'm more so focused on playing this one right now because I want to still get a grasp on learning certain things before I tackle Warhammer 2, which has added other things and probably make it a bit more advanced and complicated. And then I'll be really delving into that at some point. But I will say that one got buffed up in terms of how it runs. Like this one, my computer recommends I play it on high quality. Warhammer 2, it said medium. And I was like, oh, okay. That got buffed up, where it's harder to run. Battles, you can be able to do quest battles. This is a really cool feature within the campaigns. You got all these leaders that have their own quest battles to get certain loot items, like be able to get a better weapon or a better armor for each of the different legendary lords in the different factions. You can manually select them if you want and play them right now, though it would give you a army that it's pre-selected. I think you don't get to choose your army for it, whereas whatever army you have at the time in the campaign you can take into those quest battles. So it can be a little challenging to go ahead and do that, but I mean, these are fun. These are lots of fun. They can be very difficult and challenging though. Like the ones for Archaon, oh my gosh, those are hard. But yeah, there's lots of these, and they are all really cool, really fun. As you can see, I've already completed some of them because I've been messing with some of these characters and such, like Thor Grimm and Karl Franz, and I've done a lot of their quests, which are really great. And then there's going to be things like, this is also a multiplayer game. You can actually battle other people with factions, or even do co-op multiplayer campaigns if you want. Custom battles, which is something that I'll do a separate video on, where I actually show you guys some of the different units and how they look, because man, seeing how they look on the battlefield is very, very cool. But man, I've been having an absolute blast with this game. I highly recommend picking it up. It's a little pricey, and more if you're gonna include both the game and that's one thing that this franchise is known for. It's notorious about its DLC, downloadable content. You can see here a lot of these different factions And these campaigns, only available through DLC, like the Wood Elves, the Beastmen. Those are like $19 each. Fortunately, I picked these up when they had a big 30th anniversary sale, so they were a lot cheaper. So what I recommend is if you have a Steam account, put it on your wish list. And then when it goes on sale, it will email you when it goes on sale. And when it goes on sale, that will be a great time to pick this up because, my gosh, guys, you can get hundreds of hours of value from this game. If you have a good enough PC to run it, and if you are into strategy games that offer a challenge, I highly recommend picking this up, especially when it goes on sale, because the DLC can be even more pricey than the actual game. So, you know, this is a great game, but man, Sega and Creative Assembly can be a little notorious when it comes to their pricing their DLC. So, but I highly recommend Total Warhammer. I'll be making another video where we take a look at some of the units, just so I can show you guys how they look, because man, it looks great. They look really cool. Just show you guys. It also helps you figure out how to play, or rather, what you want to get, or what their strengths are, or how they look. You know, because hey, if some of them don't look cool, you're not necessarily going to want to be motivated to play them, right? Right? So, highly recommend Total War Warhammer. I'm having a blast playing it. I think you will too. And I'll see you guys next time.